All right. Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Chuck Collins. I'm with GTX Connect. And this is being brought to you in a partnership with GTX Connect and Dell Call for Ideas, Dell Medical School Call for Ideas. And tonight we have our panelists that we're going to talk about dementia and those who love folks who are going through that right now. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our panelists. Becky, let's start with you.
Hi, and welcome everybody. My name is Becky Fultome. I am the Executive Director for A Gift of Time. We provide services to caregivers and people who are living with dementia and Alzheimer's through virtual and in-person sessions. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you. Linda?
Hi, I'm Linda Miller. I live here in Georgetown, and my husband, Jerry, was diagnosed almost 8 years ago with mild cognitive impairment, and he has moved from that into currently under hospice care in a facility now.
Mr. Figarelli?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Vic Figarelli. I am a former caregiver. I cared for my wife while she was living at home with dementia. She has since passed 6 years ago. I volunteer for A Gift of Time, and I also volunteer for Special Friends, which is a respite program.
All right, thank you very much. So for those of you who are looking at the chat, and if you're not, please look at the chat. There's a link for you to be able to ask a question on an app called Slido. You can ask a question, or if you see a question that's already there and you'd like to vote on it, please do so. The questions with the most votes get moved to the top of the list of the questions I'll be asking. So please go out and ask your question. This is really fueled by you and your curiosity on a subject. So please go out there. If you have any problems with it, say something on the chat, and I'll try and get to you as quickly as I can. Remember, I'm kind of by myself tonight, so it may take a little while. So let me see what's been asked so far. Okay, so we're still waiting for some questions. While we're waiting, I'll ask a question. What do you think is the most misunderstood part of dementia and just cognitive difficulties as you age? Becky, if you want to start.
Sure. In my opinion, I think it is that people don't understand that Alzheimer's is just under the umbrella of dementia, that there are many different forms of dementia. Some of them you probably have heard of the Parkinson's dementia. There's Korsakoff's dementia, which is the one that's induced by alcoholism. I'm going to try to name off a few of them, and you guys can help me if you think of some other ones. Lewy body, yep, that's a very common one too. And so it's basically just on it's based on the symptoms that somebody has. And so a lot of times people will say, well, they have Alzheimer's when it's actually some other form of dementia, or they'll say it's dementia when they're meaning something else. So I think that's probably the biggest thing, and people don't realize that it's not a normal part of aging. Actually, it's actually a disease. So thank you.
Following through on that idea of a disease, I think many people don't realize that as a disease, it is actually something eating away at the brain. People do not act that way because they want to. They act that way because their brain is being destroyed by dementia. So you can't talk them out of it. You can't medicate them out of it. It is going to happen, and you have to learn to live with it.
The only thing I would add is there's a very innocuous term called memory loss, and I think sometimes it really masks the problems and issues that come with someone having a form of dementia, Alzheimer's or something else. Because memory loss gives you the impression that you're forgetful. You forgot where you put your keys or something like that. But dementia really means a person's ability to carry out daily functions is seriously impaired, and more so as time goes on. And the other aspect of it is that there are behavior and personality changes that occur. So memory loss is almost a euphemism, or I shouldn't say euphemism. It's too mild of a word to describe what is a pretty devastating state of affairs as the disease progresses.
Thank you. Thank you all. So the next question here is, what kind of doctor was the most helpful in diagnosing and treating your loved one?
It's kind of a loaded question because the doctor is the one that you count on at the beginning to let you know exactly what's going on, and it is traditionally a neurologist. This is one that in support groups that a support group I was in, there one of our major problem was finding that there is not really a doctor who does anything other than diagnose. That essentially the neurologists are doctors, they are trained to diagnose, they are not trained to treat, because it is not a treatable disease. And therefore you tend to fall a little bit into limbo once that diagnosis is made. And where do you go from there?
Yeah, I'm curious. Where did you go from there? I mean, is it once the diagnosis is made, it's not, as you said, not a treatable disease, right? So what are the next steps?
Well, basically, in our case, we were fortunate to have an internist who gave us the name of some organizations. The first one being AGE of Central Texas, who have a marvelous program in many aspects of dementia. And through them, we learned about the Alzheimer's Association, another group which you shouldn't be put off by the name Alzheimer's alone, because it is, they treat all dementias. They give you information on all dementias. They have a 24/7 helpline, and it is literally can be called, and there is somebody there to help you with your questions, send you resources, and help. The other major one, there's also Alzheimer's Texas here in, which is a separate organization from Alzheimer's Association, Alzheimer's Texas being strictly a Texas branch of it. And through all of these, basically there are support groups, there are education groups, and they were our primary source of information, not from a doctor. I think that is changing. I know there are a number of research studies now that are going on that they realize the importance and the need for this for those who have been diagnosed, and exactly where do you go from there.
Vic, does that kind of mirror your experience?
Yes, pretty much. When we began to notice changes in my wife's ability to remember things and do certain functions, our primary care doctor recommended we go up to Temple. We were under the Baylor Scott and White system. And both of us went through an extensive 5 hours, I think, thereabouts, her being evaluated for certain cognitive abilities, and my being asked questions about things at home. And once that occurred, same thing. I started to look for information. Was helped by the several respite programs that existed at the time, and 2 of them still exist, because they were sources of information. There's another specialist, her name is Tam Cummings. She's a renowned expert in Alzheimer's, has a number of useful information pieces about the stages of Alzheimer's, the behaviors that you would expect with them. There's an assessment tool that can be used to evaluate the degree of dependency or independency the person has, and so on. So in many respects, she was a very useful resource, because I started to see things ahead of when my wife reached the stage. I was able to understand what stage she was at.
Becky, you have anything to add? I'm not sure if you have a loved one that you were dealing with as well.
No, I actually don't. My experience has been, I started out as a nurse assistant at the age of 19 over at the Wesleyan at Scenic across the street from the hospital. A job, I had been working at Sonic on Austin Avenue during high school, and I wanted something different to do. So my mom suggested that I go over there and be a nurse assistant. So I did, and that's how I got into the career. But yeah, I just have it from a caregiver, being a paid caregiver, nurse assistant. That's my experience, and then also working at the Wesleyan for many, many years, and seeing the challenges, families coming in and looking for places to place someone. Of course, there's in my world, working there, it seemed like everybody was in a facility, but then, the truth is it's a very, very small percentage of people who actually end up in communities, and it's more likely that they're going to be taken care of by somebody at home. And as I've been talking with folks here in town, I'm just surprised to hear how many people are just, being diagnosed and then sent on their way with no resources whatsoever. And so that's what our goal is, to kind of bridge that gap at that point of crisis, I guess you could call it, and to kind of help and be more of a resource for folks here in Georgetown too. So
Do you find that part of the problem may be, I don't want to say problem, but that there's a racial or cultural basis to, where the people are being put into care facilities or staying at home? Is there a cultural aspect to that?
While the African-American population is twice more likely to be diagnosed, and the Hispanic population is 1.5 times more likely to be diagnosed, they're less likely to take advantage of any of the resources. And so while it be, financial or a cultural thing, I know that Vic has done some some research on this and has an idea too, but it can be that, it can be barriers to that, but we've just have found, when I did home health for a while in Austin, and I was an aide and would give baths, and there's a lot of the folks who, the African American folks and the Hispanic folks were just, it was more likely that they would take care of somebody at their house, and whether it would be, they made promises to the people, or if it was a financial thing, which I suspect probably was a large part of it, because institutions are expensive. And a lot of times there is a lot more family support. People tend to live, more closely together or in the same household. And so they have that additional help, and multi-generational in one family.
Thank you. So looking at Slido, our next question is, are most dementia patients medicated for symptoms caused by the dementia? Whoever would like to tackle that.
There are, if I understand the question correctly, there are some medications that can be used to ameliorate or slow down the progress. There's no cure. They can be useful. They do have side effects. I know from personal experience, one of the side effects is hallucinations from one of the medications. But there are medications, again, all they can do is pretty much slow the progress to some degree and tamp down the symptoms to some degree. But they're not cures.
I was trying to remember a statistic. Let's see if I can even get close to it. But the average nursing facility resident is taking about 17 medications a day, and somebody living on a memory care unit is more like 28. And so from my experience, there are a lot of things. It may be the specific, dementia related drugs like the Mendo, things like that. But a lot of the anti-anxiety drugs, the hallucination drugs. Of course, I'm not a nurse, but they are more likely to be prescribed those kinds of medications.
One of the problems with medications, we've found that the ones which are aimed basically at Alzheimer's, there's one of the early ones that people started on is that, as Jerry started, was Aricept or donepezil, and that is for early Alzheimer's. Not necessarily for Parkinson's or any of the other dementias, but there are specific ones for each of them. The problem becomes as dementia increases, as in Jerry's case, they feel now that he is showing signs of all 5 of the major dementias. So where his initial diagnosis was Alzheimer's and vascular, he now shows signs of Lewy body and Parkinson's, which tend to be considered almost the same nowadays, I'm gathering, and also frontotemporal, one of the other main ones. Unfortunately, one of the major ones that's given in for Alzheimer's in the middle stages is contraindicated for somebody with Parkinson's. So while the one that is given to help keep people a little bit calmer in the middle stages of Alzheimer's, Jerry has been getting, and now we've decided to stop that one to see if that will, if perhaps it's actually making him worse as opposed to better, now that the other is beginning to show itself a little bit more. So it's a real difficult thing to try and figure out the medications in later time, maybe not quite so much in the early part. And essentially, most of those I'm finding seem to come from the neurologist who makes the diagnosis, though some of the internists, ours actually took that over as being willing to be the one that to prescribe those for Jerry.
Right. Thank you. So next question is, what is a good way to respond to someone who is somewhat delusional? Talk of someone using a shower in their room at night, stealing items, etc. So I think it's a question kind of dealing with with some of the symptoms of delusion or hallucination that may associate with dementia. At least that's what I'm taking it. Not being an expert, so I'm asking you guys. Is there a tactic or a way to handle that sort of thing, or is it kind of case by case?
In most cases, now I'll let Linda and Vic talk about that, so I'm sure they'll have more personal experience too. But we're always taught, and Dr. Tam will tell you, you meet them where they are. You don't try to talk somebody out of something. It'll probably just cause an argument. They're not going to be able to reason with you. And so if somebody asks you, well, I want to go home, you don't say, well, this is your home. Or they say, well, I want to go see my husband. Well, your husband has died. So, things like that can just cause triggers and cause very negative effects and a lot of anxiety. And so you basically just, talk to them where they are and just say, oh, well, where he would normally be, where a husband would normally be. Oh, he's at work, or he's out in the shop, or whatever. That seems to, a lot of times have a lot less of a negative effect on folks. But Linda and Vic, I'm sure you guys probably have had, some experiences with that and can share.
Well, I do remember with my wife, she had a delusion that she woke me up, shook me awake 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and insisted that my father was in the house and he was in trouble. He was in the bathroom, and that her father was trying to help him. My only response was deal with that was to say, okay, let's go look and see. So I put all the lights on, we went into the bathroom and I looked and I says, I don't see anybody here. I opened the shower curtain to see, I said, maybe they're behind that. And I turned on another lights room. I says, maybe they went into another room. And by that time, she come around to the fact that they were not there anymore. And she did finally go back, was able to get her back to bed to go back to sleep. So I think it kind of, that's where she was. She was in a situation where she thought that there were two men, her father and father-in-law, who were in need of trouble, and I just went along with it. And finally, she calmed down and went to sleep. So the last thing you want to do is argue with them. Again, they don't know what they're saying, and you can't talk them out of where they are. At some point in time, my wife didn't recognize me anymore as her husband. I was a variety of relationships. Ultimately, towards the end, I was her father. She had regressed in time back to when she was a little girl, and she would call me daddy. So I just answered. I mean, I answered to that appellation. I didn't argue with her that I wasn't her father, and so that's the other. I think you can do in some cases is digression. Sometimes you can change the subject and get them onto something else, and whatever was bothering them has no longer bothering them. It passes.
I know when my grandmother was going through it, when I was just a kid, but up until the end, she remembered me and my brother, but she did not remember my mom. And I remember, again, I'm 6 or 7. I couldn't figure out the logic of that, and my mom just said, "Just however she is, that's what this is." But we didn't have to go through her not knowing us, and for that I am thankful. So the questions have slowed down a bit. So if you don't mind, Becky, if you take this time to kind of talk about and Vic, because I know you're involved in it too, a gift of time and what it is you're seeking to do in the community.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, we've been around for about 6 years, just trying to get back running again after COVID and a bit of a management change. And so I've just been with them for about 5 months. And so I'm trying to pick up where the previous ED left off. And so that's mainly is getting the word out there about what we do and the resources that we provide. One of the things that we are going to be looking at is adding an additional day or two for respite available in Georgetown for family caregivers. And so it'll be something that we're providing respite care and then also providing services or programming, I should say, for the caregiver to give them an opportunity to get outside the house and, not just go to a support group, but to do something, with participatory arts, yoga, a ton of different things. I'm talking to Senior University to see if we could possibly be a site for them as well. So that way they can kind of, get out of the house, know that their loved one is somewhere nearby in a room next door and being taken care of while the caregiver is taking a little bit of a break and doing something fun for themselves. So we've just kicked off. We've done recently our second Camille's Memory Cafe, and Camille's Memory Cafe is actually named after Vic's beautiful wife. We did one back in September. It was with Elvis. And it was a wonderful time. He did a great program for us and had everybody up and dancing. And we did a second one last Friday at the library, and it was with Simple Sparrow Care Farms. And so Jamie Turner, who was their ED, brought out some chicks and a bunny and actually a snake. And she was very, very informative about how different people perceive those different threats and how a body manages that. So it's extremely interesting. So we do those once a month over at Georgetown Library totally free. And next month in November, we'll be hosting Ken Cummins. He is a magician. And so he'll be coming out and spending a couple hours with us. And then in December, we'll be doing sing along with Bob Apple, who is kind of a country singer, local celebrity. And so that's what we're doing. We also do the Camille's Memory Cafes virtually as well. And Vic and Reg Rowe, who is also on our board, they host those, and those are the first Friday of every month. So that, in addition to Dr. Tam Cummings' webinars that she does once a month, and some other information that we have on our website at agiftoftimegeorgetown.org. You'll be able to see lots and lots of different resources, educational programming. And it's my goal to do a lot more of those, to get out more in Georgetown and let people know about the great things that we're doing. So we appreciate the opportunity to speak to the group today, and feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to sit down with people one-on-one and just hear what they have to say and see where we can help them. So thanks, Chuck, for the opportunity. Vic, did you want to add anything? Did I forget something?
I don't think you forgot anything. My role has been pretty much the putting together the content for Camille's Memory Cafe, and pretty much have focused on music as the vehicle to engage both the caregiver and the person with dementia. And again, I'm not a scientist in this area, but there's research that shows that music probably taps into more parts of the brain than any other stimuli that you can think of. So you will find people responding to music. They could be almost catatonic, and some song comes along, or a hymn, or what have you, and all of a sudden they are singing the words and following and along with the melody. So the net result is we're now brought Camille's Memory Cafe to 2 memory care locations, one at the Grand Living and the other one at the Lady. And it's been really gratifying to see the response of those who are in the more advanced stages of dementia, that they still can respond to to music. It brings back memories. I mean, if it's not just the music and the words, it brings back recollection of things they might have done during that era, when that song, when that movie was out.
And I also know that you do quite a bit with baseball.
Yes, there is another one I'm involved with, which is called Talking Baseball. In fact, Jerry Miller was an active participant in that, and that's held. That's hosted by Reg Rowe, and that's held the 2nd and 4th Wednesday of each month. And so baseball is the vehicle by which people engage and they reminisce. So that works very well also.
Linda, did you have anything to add?
No, I know I've had experience with both A Gift of Time and Talking Baseball, and both groups are wonderful for both the care partner and the person living with dementia. It's just good for them and for all of us to be in touch with others who are going through the same thing. And we learn from each other, and we are buoyed up by seeing how others cope, and just the fact that we are not alone in this journey.
Right. And just a kind of a follow on, Beck, is there anything you need from the community? So, you know, any help or assistance that you would like. So wink, nod, this is your opportunity to ask for money.
Yes, we can always use money, and volunteers too. We'd love to have volunteers at our in-person memory cafe, the 3rd Friday of every month over at Georgetown Library. It's only about a 3-hour period of time. Love to have folks. And then of course, donations, you know, as we ramp up and get our WISPR program going, we want to start a scholarship fund. So folks who can't afford to pay would be able to participate as well. So Yeah, always can use donations for, you know, activities and things like that. Definitely, we are sending out information packets, so donations are always awesome. So we will have money to pay for postage. So Dr. Tam Cummings has a wonderful workbook that she's providing to everybody. She brought them to me, but I went to mail a couple of them the other day and realized that it costs almost $10 just to mail one. So yeah. So just little things like that, but every little bit helps. And, you know, just the more you guys can spread the word, you know, if you know of anybody else who's having issues, and just refer them to our website. It's got a bunch of really good information on there. I'd love to be able to forward, get them on our email distribution list so they can get specific invitations to Dr. Cummings' presentations and to our different cafes and all the other really cool stuff we're doing. So please feel free to spread the word. So appreciate that. Thanks, Chuck.
No problem. And I put your information in the chat as well for anybody that would
Thank
like
you.
to see where your website and your phone number is.
And if I could add a wish to that list in terms of donations, the Camille's Memory Cafe at the library. It would be nice, I don't want to get into the library politics, but it's expensive to buy their coffee and rolls. If we could get support in that area, so that when people come and gather, that they can gather around coffee and breakfast pastries or something like that, and help that engagement of not only the couple, but with other couples. So I would like to see that happen.
Great. Thank you, Vic, for mentioning that. That's very, very true. We're not allowed to bring in, you know, a dozen donuts or even bring in our own coffee. So we have to go through their program, which is, you know, it's a very Sweet Lemon does a great job for us, but it is a little expensive. So it'd be nice to have someone else offset those costs each month for us. So thanks.
A related question that's come onto Slido. Will a gift of time programs be available to people and or caregivers younger than age 65? You're really getting to the early onset dementias is really the basis of that question.
Yeah, there won't be an age limit by way of if there's a diagnosis of dementia, memory loss, Alzheimer's. Yeah, those are the folks that we'd like to reach. So yeah, there's not. We know that you know, people can be diagnosed as early as 40 with some of the dementias. So yeah, there will not be an age limit on that.
And maybe you mentioned at the beginning, but we have a question here. Are all dementias progressive?
Yes. Yeah, it is. It's a terminal disease. Some of them have shorter lifespans than others. I think what I heard, if I was listening correctly, I think the average time from, you know, early diagnosis to death can be as long as 7 to 10 years. But that again, you know, Dr. Tam Cummings has wonderful specifics on this. And if you guys want to email me at a gift of time, Becky at agiftoftimegeorgetown.org, I can send you past presentations that Dr. Cummings has done. So it answers a lot of really good basic questions like that.
Okay.
Jerry was diagnosed with almost 8 years ago, coming up 8 years ago, at the very beginning, and he is progressing now into hospice. But it is the 8 to 10 years is not at all uncommon in the later onset. Early onset definitely goes quicker, and I believe it is frontotemporal lobe that also tends to go a little quicker. But it is progressive. There is no cure. Anyone who has dementia of any sort will eventually die, if not with it, with the cause of death is something else, but will die because of it.
I might mention in December, I noticed looking ahead for Dr. Cummings' presentation in December, she talks about death and dying. And so I've looked ahead in the workbook, and it's some really, really good information. I mean, of course, it's sad to hear and sad to know that that's the reality of that, but being armed with the information and what to expect, I think is, it's somewhat comforting for people. So again, check out our website, and you can register through there if you'd like to attend that one.
Right. And then we have another question here. Is the process of keeping mentally stimulating the person with dementia, does it slow down the progression of the disease?
We're told no. I don't know, the other folks that have attended some of her things, that there's nothing really to slow it down, but you can enhance somebody's quality of life by doing certain things. And I think it's helpful for the caregiver to be able to feel like they're doing something, but it definitely doesn't go backward. I don't know if there's anything, even the medications, that can slow it down. But I may be, like I said, I'm not a nurse, but that's what I know.
It probably makes living with it a little easier for the person. Like anybody who does not have dementia. And having been going through COVID here myself and sitting at home for 5 days and how boring it becomes, I can only assume somebody with dementia, if there's a little bit of stimulation, it's got to make you generally feel a little better about yourself. And I noticed that with Jerry, when I go in or somebody else, they tell me there is some residual effect of somebody was there, even though he doesn't remember once I've gone that I've been there, but yet there is a glow, if you like, and that's not really the right word, but there is some sort of a good feeling that lasts for a little bit at least. Now, I think that as time goes on, there is less of that, but it is definitely, if you can keep somebody stimulated, even if their mind is not fully on what is doing the stimulating, at least there is, like Vic's program of, as Vic was saying with the music, it's stirring up something that was in the past, as opposed to sitting there trying to figure out what's going on, what's wrong with me, what's happening around me. So while it may not slow it down, maybe it makes it more enjoyable while you're doing it.
And can help with negative behaviors, such as asking the same questions over and over again, or searching for something or wandering for something. It can take your mind off of it, their mind off of it for a little bit as well.
It probably depends a lot on what stage of the disease they are in as well.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there any evidence that physical exercises help?
Physical exercise, I think, does help from a number of standpoints. One is, they start to lose certain abilities like balance and so on. So anything you can do to keep the muscles strong is going to be a help. There's no reason why, unless if somebody's just not mobile, there's no reason why you would not continue to do exercises. It does help, in my view. I used to take my wife for a walk every day. Kind of a side note is, when you take a walk like that, we used to pass a garden. One of the houses on the block had a garden. And every morning she remarked about how beautiful the garden was. Same flowers, same thing. And what occurred to me later on, and reflecting on that, is there's still some teaching moments that they have for us. Stop and look at the beauty of what happens that's before you every day. So I kind of got off the track, but there's a lot of, I wanted to get to that point. We've been talking about the downside of Alzheimer's related dementias. But these people are not, even though their behaviors are changing and they're no longer what they were before, they have very rich narratives to tell. Now, the stories may be somewhat, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Conflate lots of different pieces of stories into one narrative. But still in all, it's a very, very interesting story. And if you, and one of the things I find with Camille's Memory Cafe is in some cases, again, whether it's the Camille's Memory Cafe, we're talking baseball, they can pick up on something and they can tell you a story about maybe that ball player they met or the time they went to a concert and they saw Frank Sinatra or Tony Bennett or something like that. And so if you want to get enrich your life somewhat, just listen to them. They have a lot to offer. Of course, as to get into the later stages, it's not as easy to extract that kind of information.
All right, I apologize for any noise you may hear. I've got a giant dog and a 9-year-old grandson. So they, neither one of them kind of gets the concept that I'm at work right now.
So at least you don't have a 9-year-old dog and a great big grandson.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Maybe it'd be a little quieter though. Okay. So here's the next question. Is it necessary to keep an eye on a person with dementia for 24 hours? Is there any possibility of leaving them in the house, or is falling or starting a fire or something like that a concern?
Absolutely, yes, it is a concern. Again, depending on the stage, but unfortunately, you don't always know when they have reached that stage. But I do know of a couple people, fortunately, did not have a problem in our house, but where there were pans left on the fire, on the stove rather, and burned dry, and potential fire was found just in time. And the person said, well, I didn't turn it on. No, it wasn't me. So definitely it's a difficult line as to at what point they can be left alone or can no longer be left alone, because to that person, there's nothing wrong with them. Mm-hmm. So they are safe if you ask them. And obviously having someone come in and stay with them when you go means that you don't think that they're safe. So this was a very, very big issue in our household. Just that being able to allow Jerry to have as much independence as he could, but still to keep him safe. All seniors are more liable to fall for scams. Mm-hmm. And we all know that those are out there. And in fact, that happened in our household. That one which came in on the computer, which caused all of our, allowed somebody to get into our computer. And I discovered it just as it was at the beginning, but it still necessitated closing all accounts, canceling all credit cards, because we did not know how much of our financial information and personal information was taken from the computer. So it was literally hours and hours and days of work on my part, because Jerry did not know why were we doing all this? What happened? Well, nobody ever got in the computer. It's just a wonderful denial because of the inability to understand what happened. So it's a very hard thing it's hard to be stuck together 24/7. It's even harder to go out and feel that they're not safe where they are, which is why a program such as the Gift of Time, what they are hoping to set up for their day center. And I think this is probably an appropriate time to bring up a couple of the other ones, one of which Vic is involved with too. But here in Georgetown, there are two groups that meet through a couple of the churches. There's one called Powell's Place at the First United Methodist Church, which meets on Mondays from 10 to 2. And this is a one-on-one volunteer with the participant. And you take your person there and leave them off, and they are looked after wonderfully and given lunch. And you have 4 hours to do doctor's appointments, grocery shopping, lunch with a friend, whatever you need that particular moment in time. The other one is Special Friends at the Worship Place in Sun City, and it is a similar program, one-on-one, and it runs from 10 to 1 on Thursdays. And there is no charge for these programs. It is done strictly through volunteers at the church, and the numbers are limited. I've given Chuck the details on that one. He can put that on how to contact those people if it is something that would be of interest to you.
Yeah, Linda, everything's, I just put it in the chat. But I think what we're also going to do is just email it for people who were able to attend, and even for the folks who weren't able to attend, because Linda has been very kind enough to give me an entire list of places and references that people could use, and places to refer.
Yeah.
So if we don't get to all of them tonight, which we've got a few minutes left, we will send the entire list out later on.
Okay. Well, one other one, just a quick one here. I have, I don't know if that knows, a Take Me Home program through the Georgetown Police Department. This is one that if your person tends to wander, or if you are gone and you feel that they've been safe to leave, and you find out that they aren't, that they've gone off someplace, or they've driven off someplace and found that they're lost, you can register your person with the Georgetown Police Department. And if they find them, you notify them if they are missing. They've got all the details. They know that this is a person with dementia. They need to be approached in a certain way, and they know, once they recognize who they are, how to get them back to you. It's a fantastic free program.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got about 10 minutes left. I want to take this time to give you an opportunity to talk about anything that you think we missed that's important for folks to know. I'll just start with Becky and say if there's anything, is there anything that we should know that we haven't talked about yet?
I just think, in addition to, when you're communicating with someone with dementia, and, getting in their space, in their period of time, is also, don't ask them a bunch of questions, like, what's today? Or why are you doing that? Or, how long have you been married? Or what's her name? Those can cause a lot of stress. Just think about it in yourself. If somebody asks you a question that you don't know the answer to, it does cause a little bit of anxiety. So imagine, if you're trying to, and it's something that you should know and you don't. So it's better to talk with someone and not really ask those who, what, where, and why questions. It's just quizzing them. The answers. There's really no reason to ask them that question. And I think sometimes people do it just to kind of find out where they are in their their disease process. I imagine that's probably why people do that, but just wanted to caution people about doing that. But that's the only thing I can think of that I would suggest that might be helpful.
No, Becky, a question just kind of snuck in under the radar here, but it's kind of related to what you were just talking about. So are people with dementia somewhat aware of what's happening to them?
Yeah, it depends on what stage. Yeah.
In the early stages, they are.
Probably the hardest part of all, when you know what is going on. In many ways, the later stages are easier, if that's the right word, because you're no longer aware. Whereas in the early ones, you were aware that before you get into the denial, but you are aware that you are losing your mind, which has to be a horribly scary thing to go through.
Yeah, and there's lots of things out there about the different stages of dementia, and so where you can kind of, I wouldn't say self-diagnose, but to get a better idea of where a person might be in that stage. I know that Dr. Tam's book, I believe it's available on Amazon, and it goes along with her video series, but she's got a lot of great resources in the appendix, different kind of scales and other kinds of resources that you can answer, the questions and have available when you go see the doctor, to kind of help them. Because, she talks about when, and I don't know, Linda and Vicky, if you have experienced this, but on doctor day, you get the person all ready, they know they're going somewhere, and for whatever reason, they're just on their best behavior that day, because I guess it's just a familiar place. And so they come in and they act like that, there's absolutely nothing wrong. And you're trying to explain to the doctor, well, this is not what they're normally like, and so those types of tools you can answer certain questions, and that way you can kind of give it to the doctor in advance or part of the session. So Linda and Vic, did y'all find that when you're dealing with the doctor, if there was
Oh yeah, it's
Yeah.
always, I'm fine, there's nothing wrong. Yep, always on best behavior. And not best behavior is not really the right way to put it, but just very nicely in denial on those days. Yeah.
I guess the one thing we didn't talk about, and I think if anyone that's out there is a caregiver, is you need to take care of yourself.
Oh yeah.
Because the caregiver really goes through a lot of stress, goes through a lot of feelings of guilt, sometimes gets angry and has to go into a closet and shout into the closet just to relieve the anger. It is important to do as much as you can in terms of maintaining social contact, of making sure that you are eating and healthy and active, exercising the best you can, because it will get to you. It will get to you mentally and physically over a long period of time. So it's important that be done.
There's a wonderful website called dailycaring.com. That was one of the ones I sent in too. And basically they will, if you tell them to please send me your email every day on it, they have wonderful things in it every day. Some of them more appropriate than others, but it will cover all the various things for the types of situations you might get into and how to handle those. Something that's touching on what Vic just said also, they make the point from them, they had one of the things that they said, as a caregiver, make sure you do this for yourself. Be assertive with doctors and people and ask for help when you need it. Be patient with everyone, be forgiving of yourself, avoid eating or drinking for comfort, talk about it to others, write in a journal, email, or letter to a friend. Turn to faith or spirituality, exercise away the stress, walk, bike, swim, or garden. Don't make assumptions about anything, communicate. Don't take it personally, and it includes everything that your person may say or do. You are not the cause of the dementia sufferer's ill temper. It is the disease, and they cannot control it. So even though they may come out and accuse you, they aren't doing it because they hate you, even though it may sound that way. They're not swearing at you because they really feel that way. They just don't have control over it anymore.
That's right. That's good stuff, Linda. One thing that I kind of equate it to is, when you're on the airplane and the airline flight attendants, I didn't want to call them stewardesses,
Right.
flight attendants are giving instructions.
That's another webinar.
They talk about put the oxygen mask first on your face, so you've got to, as a caregiver, you need to put your oxygen mask on your face first and take care of yourself. Because there's a very, high incidence rates of depression and anxiety, in the caregivers, and as much as they're trying to do. One of the things that Dr. Tam mentioned in her last session last month was she talked about sitting down and writing yourself a thank you letter, for all the stuff, all the things that you're doing, all the one, that you don't have to be doing, all the wonderful things that all the care you're providing and the meals, and if there's any kind of, regular activities of daily living, sit down and write yourself a thank you letter. And I thought that was really poignant. So I wanted to share that too and add it onto Linda's list.
All right. Well, we're just about at time. I want to thank all of you and the audience for putting up with me broadcasting from a cave, apparently. Now that I look at myself on the video here. But I do want to thank all of our panelists. You've given us a great amount of information and some understanding around this issue. And I just, any last comments you'd like to say before we sign off?
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I hope we've been of some help.
Mhm.
I'm sure you have. I'm sure you have. All right, everybody. Well, that's it for us. Have a good night. There will not be a program in November or December, but we're going to start again in the new year. We're going to start strong. So good night, everybody, and have some, it's a little early, but have happy holidays and
Happy holidays.
enjoy being with your family or significant other or your dog, whoever. It doesn't matter. But just enjoy yourselves, and then we'll see you back in January.